My name is Catherine Carter. I'm 29 years old, and if you asked anyone to describe me, they'd probably say I'm practical. Not boring, not cold, just the kind of woman who plans before she leaps. I work in IT. I own a small house I bought with my own savings, and I'm proud of every dollar I've earned. My dad, Joe, a truck driver who worked double shifts after Mom left, made sure my brother Kevin and I learned one thing early. Money doesn't define you, but how you use it does. For most of my life, I thought I had everything figured out, until I met David Hale. He was 27, then a marketing executive, with that effortless charm that draws everyone in without even trying. We met at a friend's housewarming party. I still remember the first time I saw him. He was leaning against the kitchen counter, laughing too loud at someone's story. When our eyes met, he said something cheesy like, "If you keep staring, I'll start thinking I'm in trouble." I laughed, and that was it. David was all the things I wasn't: spontaneous, magnetic fun. He made ordinary moments feel cinematic. He'd show up outside my office just to take me on random coffee runs. He'd tell me, "You work too hard, Catherine. Life's not just spreadsheets and plans." And maybe that's what drew me in. He made me feel lighter. But as much as he liked my calmness, he also liked teasing it. I remember once we were grocery shopping together. I reached for the generic brand of coffee and he smirked. "You really are allergic to labels, huh?" I thought it was a joke, but even then, something about the way he said it stuck with me. David came from a world I'd never known. Weekend getaways, luxury watches, parents who ordered imported wine by the crate. His mother, Carla, had the kind of polished presence that made me instinctively straighten my posture whenever she entered a room. His father, Alan, was colder, calculating, successful, intimidatingly calm. Still, I believed David and I balanced each other. He said he loved my independence, how I didn't need him to feel complete. But lately I began to wonder if that independence also made him feel small. After 2 years together, things were steady. We talked about marriage casually while cooking, driving, lying in bed. I thought we were on the same page. Until one night, while we were watching a movie, David suddenly said, "You know, my coworker Mark just got engaged. His fiance's ring, 3 carats platinum band. Not too flashy, but still elegant." I smiled, trying to keep it light. "Sounds lovely. Hope he didn't go broke." David chuckled. "You get what you pay for, right?" I brushed it off, assuming it was just small talk. But then the hints kept coming. One day he sent me a text with a photo attached. A sleek diamond-studded ring. "This is so me," he wrote. Curious, I searched it online. Price $11,800. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, wondering if it was supposed to be a joke. I replied with a teasing, "That's a car, not a ring." He replied with a laughing emoji. That was all. But from then on, every conversation about marriage seemed to circle back to the ring. Whenever we went out with his friends, someone would mention engagements, and David would casually say something like, "Catherine's got high standards, but she's not easily impressed. It's going to take something timeless to win her over." I'd laugh along, pretending it didn't sting. But deep down, I was confused. I'd never even said I wanted a ring that expensive. Why did it suddenly feel like we were competing with other couples? I tried talking to my brother about it. Kevin laughed at first. "He's testing you, Elle. Don't take the bait. If you start matching his family's standards, you'll lose yourself." Dad was blunter. "If he thinks a shiny rock proves love, he's not the man you think he is." But I didn't want to believe them. David wasn't bad. He was just raised differently. That's what I told myself: different, not shallow. Still, there were nights I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when love had turned into an unspoken transaction. One Saturday, I came over to his place. He was scrolling on his phone, barely looking up when I entered. "Hey, come here a sec," he said, sliding his phone toward me. "What's this?" "Just an idea. Look how beautiful this one is." It was another ring. This time the price tag said $25,000. My voice caught. "David, that's a down payment on a house." He grinned, unbothered. "It's not about the money, babe. It's about what it represents." That word represents echoed in my head. I looked at the ring's photo again, the way the diamond caught the light, even through the screen. It wasn't just a ring to him. It was proof. Proof of status, proof of pride, proof that he was loved enough to be flaunted. And as much as I wanted to ignore the chill running through me, one thought wouldn't leave my mind. If love has a price tag, what happens when the money runs out? When David invited me to dinner with his parents, I thought it was going to be one of those relaxed family-style evenings, maybe a few polite questions, some laughs, a bottle of wine I wouldn't be able to pronounce. I even brought dessert from my favorite local bakery just to make a good impression. But when I walked into their house, a minimalist mansion of glass and marble, I knew right away this wasn't just dinner, it was an interview. Carla greeted me at the door in an emerald dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She smiled, her lipstick perfect. "Catherine, darling. So lovely to finally have you over." Alan, tall and unreadable, shook my hand with a firm grip. "We've heard so much about you," he said. His tone made it sound like a test. David looked nervous, but excited like a student waiting for a grade. "Mom, Dad, Catherine brought dessert." Carla's eyes flickered to the simple pastry box in my hands. "How thoughtful." She set it down beside an elaborate three-tiered cake. We might not even need this one. That stung a little, but I smiled and followed them to the dining room. The table was already set with crystal glasses, perfectly folded napkins, and gold utensils. David poured me wine as Carla began chatting about their upcoming charity gala, Alan's new investment property, and how everyone's talking about this new jewelry line in Milan. I tried to keep up nodding and adding polite remarks, but every word felt like a subtle reminder that I didn't belong here. Then Carla turned to me with a gracious smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "So David tells us you two have been talking about marriage." My fork froze midway. "We've discussed it," I said carefully. Alan chuckled. "Good to hear. I assume you've thought about the ring." David shifted uncomfortably. "We've talked about it, yeah." Carla leaned in, her tone light but sharp. "And what kind of ring did you have in mind, Catherine?" For a moment I thought I misheard her. "Sorry." She smiled sweetly. "Well, you're the one proposing, aren't you?" I blinked, caught off guard. Actually, I thought David would. Laughter erupted around the table, polite but pointed. David joined in too quickly. "She's just being modest, Mom. She's practical about things like that." Something in me tightened. The way he said practical, it sounded like cheap. Alan nodded sagely. "Practicality's good, but there are moments in life where you can't cut corners. A man's engagement ring, for instance, it reflects how much his woman values him." The words hit me like a slap, a reflection of how much I value him. I forced a smile. "I think value comes from the person, not the price tag." Carla's smile didn't falter, but her tone cooled. "Of course. But presentation does matter. A ring is a symbol. It shows the world what kind of couple you are." David laughed nervously, glancing between us. "Babe, don't overthink it. They're just teasing." But the air felt heavy. I could feel their judgment crawling across the table. I tried to steer the conversation somewhere else, but Alan wasn't done. "If a woman's truly proud of her man, she wants the world to know it. Right, David?" David hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I guess that's true." That's when I saw it, the look on Carla's face, the quiet satisfaction of someone who'd just drawn blood. I set down my glass and took a slow breath. With all due respect, Alan, pride and love aren't the same thing. My dad gave my mom a ring that cost $600, and they were together for 20 years. She never took it off, not because of what it was worth, but because of who gave it to her. Carla tilted her head, smiling thinly. "Well, that's quaint." David's eyes darted to me, pleading silently for me not to make a scene. But it was too late. The humiliation burned too deep. I looked straight at him. "You've been quiet all night, David. What do you think?" He hesitated. "I think a ring should represent effort." "Effort," I repeated. He shrugged. "It's not just jewelry, Elle. It's a statement." That's when it happened, the words that snapped something inside me. "If you can't step up, maybe I should find someone who will." The entire table went silent. Even Carla blinked. David's face turned pale the moment he realized what he'd said. I stared at him for a long moment. Then I quietly pushed back my chair. "Good luck finding her." Carla started to say something, but I was already walking toward the door. David called after me. "Catherine, wait, I didn't mean." But I didn't turn around. My voice was calm when I said, "You did. You just didn't mean to say it out loud." The night air hit me as I stepped outside, and for the first time I realized how cold love can feel when respect is gone. That dinner was supposed to bring us closer. Instead, it showed me everything I needed to know. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a trophy that sparkled enough for everyone else to admire. And I wasn't for sale. After that dinner, everything changed. David apologized the next morning, sending flowers to my office, the expensive kind, white orchids, wrapped in silver paper. He texted, "I spoke without thinking. Please don't let one stupid comment erase everything we have." I stared at the message for a long time before replying, "I need time." What I didn't tell him was that the words still echoed in my head. Maybe I should find someone who will. Still, love has a way of blurring boundaries. A week later, I let him take me to dinner. He looked genuinely remorseful, softer than I'd ever seen him. He held my hand and said, "I don't want to lose you over something so small." Something so small. That phrase sat in my chest like a rock, but I smiled anyway, convincing myself this was progress. Maybe we just needed to rebuild. For a while we did. He was sweeter, more attentive for about 2 weeks. Then the old David crept back in. It started with little jokes again. We'd be out with his friends and someone would mention weddings, and David would laugh, "Catherine's too sensible to marry anyone who'd spend that much on a ring." Everyone laughed. Even I smiled politely. But inside I felt something crack. The next time it wasn't even subtle. His friend Max asked if we'd gone ring shopping yet. David smirked. "Not yet. She's still trying to find one that fits her budget." The table erupted. My cheeks burned. That night I stayed quiet in the car. He noticed. "Oh, come on, don't be mad. It was a joke." "Do you always joke about me to make yourself look good?" I asked, voice low. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. "You're overreacting again. You know I didn't mean it that way." "That's the problem, David," I said softly. "You never mean it that way, but somehow I always end up feeling small." He sighed, shaking his head. "You make everything so heavy. I just want to enjoy life, not analyze every word." Silence filled the car, the kind of silence that stretches thin, ready to tear. When I got home, I sat in the driveway for a full 10 minutes before going inside. My brother Kevin was watching TV, and he looked up immediately. "You look like you've been dragged through a war zone." I tried to laugh it off. "Just a long day." He muted the TV. "He humiliated you again, didn't he?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Kevin sighed. "Elle, listen to me. There's a difference between someone who challenges you and someone who chips away at you. He's not testing your love, he's testing your limits." I wanted to argue, but the truth was already gnawing at me. David's love felt like a series of exams I kept failing no matter how hard I tried. 2 days later, the ring conversation resurfaced, this time through text. He sent me another photo. This one was from Cartier, priced at $25,000. "Now this one's perfect," he wrote. "Classic, masculine, timeless." I stared at the number on the screen. My chest felt tight. I typed, "David, are you serious?" He replied instantly, "It's not about the price, it's about the gesture." The gesture. I closed my eyes. In his world, gestures were measured in carats. In mine, they were measured in consistency. That night, I dreamt of standing in a jewelry store surrounded by glittering diamonds, each one reflecting a distorted version of my face. Every reflection asked the same question, "What is your love worth?" When I told Dad about the Cartier text, he sighed and poured himself coffee. "You can't argue with people who think money is proof of love. The moment you try, you've already lost." I nodded, but deep down, I wasn't ready to lose yet. I still believed the David I fell for, the one who brought me coffee and made me laugh, was buried somewhere beneath the arrogance. The problem was, I couldn't tell if that man still existed, or if he was just the hook that reeled me in. A week later, David invited me out with his friends again. I almost said no, but guilt made me go. Maybe showing up would prove I wasn't the cold, practical girlfriend everyone thought I was. Halfway through dinner, his friend Ashley asked, "So did you two finally pick out a ring?" Before I could answer, David jumped in. "Not yet. I've shown her a few options, but you know, Catherine, she has to calculate everything twice before making a decision." Laughter, again. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't his partner anymore. I was his punchline. I set down my fork. My voice was calm, but every word was sharp. "You're right, David. I do calculate things carefully. I just haven't decided if you're worth the investment." The table went silent. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and left. My hands were shaking, but my heart finally felt steady. That night I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. Just done. But when my phone buzzed the next morning, I saw his name. "David, we need to talk. You embarrassed me last night." I stared at the message and typed back one sentence. "Now you know how it feels." It was strange how quickly love could curdle. 1 month ago, David's laughter had been my favorite sound. Now it set my teeth on edge. We were still seeing each other, half out of habit, half out of unfinished hope. I told myself we just needed one honest conversation. That maybe somewhere beneath all the tension there was still something worth saving. So when I invited him to have dinner with my family, I wanted peace, a reset. Dad grilled chicken in the backyard, Kevin set the table, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. David arrived right on time, bringing a bottle of wine that cost more than our entire meal. He smiled wide, like everything between us had been magically fixed. "Your house is cozy," he said, looking around. "It feels humble." I laughed softly. "Thanks. That's kind of the point." We sat down, and for a while it was pleasant. Dad told old road stories. Kevin teased me about being the family worrier, and even David seemed relaxed until the topic of engagement came up. Kevin, half joking, asked, "So, David, when's the big proposal happening?" David smirked. "Guess that depends on whether she's okay with me picking something from a department store." I froze. Kevin raised a brow. "What's that supposed to mean?" David chuckled. "Just kidding. Catherine and I have different ideas about quality." Dad put down his fork. "Son, quality isn't in the price. It's in how long something lasts." David grinned, confident. "True, but symbols matter. A ring shows commitment, doesn't it?" Dad leaned back, voice steady. "I gave my wife a ring worth $600. We had 20 good years before she walked out. That ring didn't stop her from leaving. The love did." The silence that followed was thick. David looked uncomfortable. "That's one way to see it." Kevin crossed his arms. "It's the right way to see it." David tried to laugh it off, but I saw the irritation flicker in his eyes, that same pride that had burned me before. When dinner ended, he barely said goodbye. The minute we were in the car, the mask dropped. "Do you always let them talk to me like that?" he snapped. I blinked. "Like what?" "Like I'm shallow, like my values are stupid." I took a breath, trying to keep calm. No one said that. They were just sharing their perspective. "Yeah, their poor perspective," he muttered under his breath. "That did it. Excuse me." "Come on, Catherine. Be honest. Your dad's been bitter ever since your mom left." Of course he'd say love isn't about money. He never had any to begin with. I turned to him, shocked. "Don't you dare talk about my father that way." "I'm just saying," he continued, voice rising. "It's easy to act righteous when you've never had options." My voice was trembling now. "Do you hear yourself? You think love is a luxury brand, don't you? You think the bigger the price tag, the deeper the feeling." No, he shot back. "I think love means giving your partner what they deserve." I laughed, bitter and exhausted. "And what do you deserve, David? A woman who measures affection in dollars, who buys your happiness in 24-karat gold." His jaw tightened. "You're twisting everything I say." "No," I said quietly. "I'm finally hearing it." He stared out the window, silent for a moment. Then he muttered, "You're cheap, Catherine. Not just with money, with everything." The word hit like a slap. Cheap. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just whispered, "If love means paying your price, I'd rather stay broke." The rest of the drive was silent. I stared out the window, watching the streetlights blur by like ghosts. When he dropped me off, I unbuckled my seatbelt slowly. "We're done, David." "You're overreacting." "I'm done," I repeated. My voice didn't shake. He tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled back. "You keep saying you want to feel valued. Maybe start by valuing someone who's not for sale." I got out of the car. He called after me, angry, desperate, but I didn't turn back. That night, I sat on my bed in silence, staring at the wilted orchids he'd given me weeks ago. I realized love wasn't supposed to make you question your worth. It was supposed to remind you of it. And somewhere between all his demands and all my excuses, I had forgotten that. He texted me one last time before midnight. "David, you'll regret this. Nobody will ever love you like I did." I stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted the message. Maybe he was right. Maybe no one would love me like he did, but for the first time in a long time, that didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like freedom. Breakups are supposed to bring silence, awkward, aching, uncertain silence, but with David it brought noise. Too much of it. At first I thought he'd move on quickly. He always had people orbiting him, friends, admirers, co-workers who worshipped his charisma. I expected him to bury our story under another glittering distraction. But David didn't disappear. He lingered, in ways that felt like shadows creeping under my door. 3 days after the breakup, I got a message from one of our mutual friends, Sophie. "Hey, are you okay? David's been posting weird stuff." I checked. His social media was full of vague, self-pitying quotes. Some people just don't know how to appreciate effort. Never love someone who confuses value with price. Comments flooded in with sympathy. People telling him he deserved better. He wasn't naming me, but everyone knew. I ignored it, thinking it would pass. But then came the texts. "You really hurt me, Catherine. After everything I gave you, this is how it ends. I can't believe you made me look like a fool." When I didn't reply, the tone changed. "You think people won't see the truth. You can't just walk away without consequences." I blocked him. 2 days later, an email from HR appeared in my inbox. Subject: follow-up on recent complaint. My stomach twisted as I read. Someone had filed an anonymous report accusing me of using company resources for personal work. I worked in IT. I had access to half the systems in the department. It was a serious accusation. My boss, Maria, called me in. She looked uneasy. "Catherine, I'm sure it's nothing, but we have to investigate. Just routine procedure." I spent half a day combing through system logs, proving I hadn't done anything wrong. When Maria finally apologized and closed the file, she said gently, "You might want to watch who you trust outside of work." I didn't need to guess. David once bragged, "You'd be surprised how easy it is to make an anonymous complaint online." At the time, I'd laughed. Now it wasn't funny. I called my brother that night. "He's trying to ruin my life, Kev." Kevin's voice hardened. "Then it's time to stop playing nice. Block him, mute him, disappear if you have to. Don't feed the fire." I tried. I really did. But the next hit came sooner than I expected. A week later, Dad called me, sounding half amused, half furious. "Guess who showed up at my house?" I froze. "No." "Yep. David Hale in a suit holding a folder like some lawyer. Said he wanted to clear the air and explained how you'd misunderstood him." "Dad, what did you do?" I told him to clear the sidewalk instead. I could hear the door slam in his tone. "He said he just wanted to make peace," Dad added. But that man's eyes, they weren't peaceful. I hung up and sat there in my kitchen, heart pounding. Every plate, every cup suddenly felt fragile. Later that week, my phone buzzed again. A new message this time from another mutual friend, Alyssa. "Hey, just checking. Are you two okay? David told everyone you ghosted him after promising to propose." I blinked. Promised to propose. Apparently that was his new version of events. Catherine, the cold, ungrateful girlfriend who backed out of an engagement after he'd already bought a ring. The audacity made me laugh, a short, sharp sound that felt more like disbelief than humor. But that laughter died the next morning when I woke up to see my social feed exploding. David had posted a long, emotional note about being betrayed by someone who never believed in love. He didn't name me, but he tagged half our mutual circle. The comment section was a battlefield. Some people sided with him, others were cautious, and a few thankfully saw right through it. My friend Sophie texted again. "He's spiraling L. You're doing the right thing by staying silent." But silence was hard when someone was rewriting your story in public. At work, I forced myself to stay composed, but the exhaustion clung to me. Even Maria noticed. "You're okay," she asked softly. I smiled weakly. "Just a breakup." She nodded. "Then remember, breakups end when you stop letting them define you." That line stuck with me. It was the first thing that made me feel like I had a choice again. A few days later, David made one last attempt to get under my skin. An email subject line, "reimbursement request." He'd listed out shared relationship expenses, dinners, gas money, clothes he claimed he bought to impress my family. Total $3,500. At the bottom, one line read, "Since you've decided to cut ties, I think it's fair you reimburse me for the investments I made in us." Investments. Like love was a stock that had failed to perform. I forwarded the email to Kevin. He replied within minutes. "He's lost it. Send him an invoice for emotional labor." Dad's advice was simpler. Send him a $1 bill with a note for your trouble. Then block him for good. I didn't do either. Instead, I replied once calmly, "David, relationships aren't transactions. Please don't contact me again." Then I hit block. The next morning, I took a deep breath, opened the blinds, and let the sunlight pour in. For the first time in months, the air in my house felt clean. David's noise was finally fading. And in the quiet that followed, I heard something I hadn't in a long time, my own peace returning one heartbeat at a time. Months passed. Seasons changed, and so did I. The first few weeks after cutting David off felt like withdrawal. I'd catch myself unlocking my phone, expecting another message, another apology, or another threat. But the silence stayed. And eventually I stopped waiting for the next storm. Work became my anchor again. I poured myself into new projects, long hours, late nights. My boss Maria noticed my focus returning. "You look lighter," she said one afternoon, "like you finally put something down." She was right, I had. I'd stopped carrying him. The people who mattered, my family, my real friends, never once asked, "Why didn't you try harder?" They just stood by me. Kevin checked in almost every night with bad jokes and takeout food. Dad would call and say, "Still breathing, kiddo." And when I said yes, he'd reply, "Then you're winning." Bit by bit, I started living again. But David's ghost still lingered at the edges of things. His name came up once at a friend's gathering. Someone asked casually, "Hey, whatever happened with that guy you were seeing?" I just smiled. He taught me the most expensive lesson of my life. They laughed, not knowing how true that was. One evening, while walking home, I passed by a jewelry store, the same one that used to make my stomach twist. Inside, the diamonds glittered, under white light, perfect, untouchable, meaningless. I stopped and looked at the reflection in the glass. There I was, older, wiser, and strangely peaceful. My reflection smiled first. I remembered the email, his ridiculous invoice, his words, "You'll regret this." But regret never came. What came instead was clarity. David had wanted a symbol, a ring, a number, a show, but I'd wanted a partner, and for a while I blamed myself for choosing wrong. But love isn't measured by who gives more. It's revealed by who takes too much. One night I opened my old journal and wrote, "Real love doesn't sparkle. It steadies you. Real love doesn't test your worth. It reminds you of it. And sometimes walking away isn't losing, it's reclaiming." A few weeks later, Sophie, the friend, who'd quietly stayed neutral through the whole mess, sent me a message. "Thought you should know. David's dating someone new. She posts a lot of designer bags. You definitely dodged a bullet." I laughed genuinely this time. "Good for him," I replied, and I meant it, because finally he was someone else's problem. Later that night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the streetlights hum in the warm dusk. My phone buzzed a text from Kevin. "Proud of you, sis. You found your backbone and your peace." I texted back a single line. "Freedom looks good on me, doesn't it?" He replied with a thumbs up emoji and a heart. I leaned back, letting the night breeze wash over me. The world was quiet again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of things that actually mattered: family, peace, self-respect. I knew now that David's love had never been about partnership, it had been a performance. And I had finally walked off his stage. My final thought before bed was simple. He called me cheap for refusing a $25,000 ring. But in the end, I realized something priceless. Freedom doesn't cost a thing.